Welcome on in, WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, and of course, following the podcast, our YouTube page, 94 WIP. Check it out. Subscribe there. All right, I wanted to give my reaction, the final reaction. We'll build the final reaction, even though we probably will talk more about it. But the final reaction, my final reaction, and first reaction, really, to the A.J. Brown interview that happened Friday, not long after I got off the air. Midday show ended at 2 o'clock. Around 3 o'clock, A.J. Brown called in. I had gotten home. And then I got word it was on. I put it on right away, and I have a lot of thoughts. I've had a lot of thoughts the last 3 days. Wasn't with you guys yesterday. I was out yesterday, but back today. And I wanted to kind of give you my feelings on the whole A.J. Brown saga. And look, I think that as a part of WIP, I'm part of what A.J. Brown was talking about. So I want to talk about my small role in whatever I think he was talking about, and then his large role in the ecosystem of all this, the Philadelphia Eagles, his importance, and the call itself. So first off, I love that he called. I love that he actually did it. If you had asked me Friday morning, Joe, do you think A.J. Brown's actually going to call WIP? I would have said no. At that point, we didn't even know if that tweet that was out there with him saying, give me the number, is actually him. So I didn't know. And my gut was telling me he wasn't going to call, that he was just frustrated. He saw a clip he didn't like that bothered him, and he's like, I'm going to call and give these guys a piece of my mind. Well, he did it, and I think that was really cool because, sometimes I think all of us, but certainly I think my generation and then younger generations could be very passive-aggressive, like just tweet through something or post passive-aggressively instead of just having a conversation. And I'm glad A.J. Brown called in. I thought it was authentic. That was the first thing I kind of hit me as I was listening. This is real. Like, this is – He's giving you his real emotions. He's kind of frustrated. He's kind of confused. And it's all right there on the air. I thought it was great radio because that's just raw and authentic. The last time I remember feeling that listening to WIP was, and I mean a back and forth, not a press conference we're playing, but a back and forth between hosts and a subject, character, person, a figure. I'll use that term, figure in Philadelphia sports was probably Gabe Kapler with Angelo Cataldi. Now, that was more contentious. This was more, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and it's how I'm feeling. And I thought Ike and Jack, and really specifically Ike, try to diffuse the situation. I think Ike, and we have a few of them here at WIP, there's a kind of a level that former players that turn into radio hosts have. They have a cachet with the current player that they could kind of see eye to eye and reason with them and level with them that I can't, that Angelo couldn't, that Jack can't, that Spike won't be able to. It's not against any of these hosts. I mean, Angelo was the best of all of us, but it's just different that when Hughes says something to a former player, when Ike says something or to a current player, it kind of diffuses us. So I thought Ike did a great job, and I just thought the back and forth was interesting, listening to A.J. Brown say what he had to say. I also think it's clear that he cares, whether I think sometimes A.J. Brown's misguided, or he is going too far with his emotions, or maybe his actions, like, changing a play in Seattle with Jalen Hurts versus his thought, which was, let's get the right play. Let's try to win the game. I do think his heart's in the right place. I felt that. I don't think this is a bad kid. I don't think he doesn't want to win. I understand why he brought up the T.O. thing and why people bring up the T.O. thing. There are some similarities because they're great Eagles wide receivers with big personalities. But I don't think it is a T.O. type of thing. Not in that way. I don't think this kid is right now shown at all driven by money to wear out his welcome with everybody to be a guy I think is going to play on 4 or 5 or 6 teams. I don't think that yet. So I don't think that's a fair thing. But I do think he cares, and I think his heart's in the right place. So all that stood out to me right away. Now the other takeaways I had, and it's not so much critical. It's just I'm wondering things as he was wondering things. I think A.J. Brown would do really well to stay off of social media. Now, it wasn't explicitly said back and forth in that conversation with Ike and Jack on Friday. But when A.J. Brown said something to the effect of, you guys are making up rumors about me, I believe, it's my assertion, that he was talking about when he went on the Kay Adams show a few weeks ago and was asked about trade rumors. And she said she saw them, on social media. I believe that originated from here at WIP, where Jack on the afternoon show had the idea, hey, would you trade A.J. Brown for Patrick Surtain? And I thought it was a fascinating idea. I said a couple days later on the midday show, I would do that trade. Now, these are sports radio trades. This is not a report. We're not journalists. It's sports radio. It's like so the way I always view it is it's a conversation. Would you do this? I mean, I'm the one who sat there and said I would trade Bryce Harper for Juan Soto. I would have, and I stand by that. And that doesn't mean Bryce Harper's not a great player. It doesn't mean AJ Brown's not a great player. It's would you make this trade? And you can agree or disagree, whatever. That's not a rumor. So I think part of the problem here and part of the misunderstanding it feels like between AJ Brown and whatever you deem the media, whether I'm the media, or Tucker's the media, or Jack's the media, or WIP, or print media, or Craig Carton, whatever, is there is a difference. And I think AJ Brown, unfortunately, like a lot of young people, falls into a trap of where they see something and they believe that this is what it is. This is the rumor being put out there. The Eagles want to trade me. They don't like me anymore. They don't want me there. Well, no, I'd say for the most part, most people on that week on our radio station didn't want to do that trade. Most fans, most hosts. I think it was more, a 70-30 thing where 30% of us said, yeah, I'd make that trade. And 70% of us said, no, I wouldn't make that trade. All fits more the defense and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do it. So that wasn't the majority. And even if it was, it's just a hypothetical. That's part of, I think it's fun. I mean, I love fake trade ideas. I love them. I mean, last June, I was trading Joel Embiid for every star under the sun. I would have traded Maxey for Dame Lillard. I would have traded Bryce Harper for Juan Soto, Trey Turner for Juan Soto. I kind of like Juan Soto. So Patrick Surtain now. I mean, I remember a show Tucker and I did back in the day where I think it was something like Zach Ertz for Jamal Adams, which whatever. They both started falling down after that. But it's a fun trade idea. That's not – what that is a conversation on WIP, a conversation between sports fans. That's not – the media hates me. The other thing I thought was interesting is A.J. Brown's thought that we should ride for the Eagles. We at WIP, or we, the media. And I think we do, but we're also fans. And fans are going to have opinions on the team, especially when a team loses 6 out of 7. You notice a year ago, there was no trade A.J. Brown for Pat Surtain talk when the Eagles were coming off a Super Bowl and the team was dominant. We're not looking to trade, good players when the team is dominant. Team falls down, we look for how to fix it. That's what we do as fans, as hosts on WIP, or what do they need to do to fix it? And some of us think more conservatively, like, draft pick here, draft pick there. Some of us think more, I'd say big picture, like, hey, what if we trade that guy? What if we blow up the team? It's just a thought exercise. That's not, and that is exactly what a talk show does. It talks about things. A columnist will talk about things. There's like this, and I used to write for NJ.com. At times, I was a reporter. I'm not anymore. I'm not a journalist, but I would go and cover Major League Baseball games. I would cover NFL games. And there's a difference between doing those two things and then opining, talking, giving an opinion. That's different. And I also think there's this weird how the sausage of a rumor gets made. And I understand being an athlete, you just see the final product. They're going to trade me. They want me traded. Well, that's not really the case. It's more of a, hey, this conversation is picked up by that outlet, and then someone says this, and then they take an opinion on that. Would you do that? And it becomes this thing. So I think A.J. Brown would do well to stay off of social media because that's where you're going to see things. And I also think social media in general is a funhouse mirror. Whatever you see there, it's amplified. So if you think all Eagles fans or all Eagles media, whatever you want to call everybody in this region, doesn't like you, you'll believe that if you go on and say, oh, they're talking bad about you again, they want to trade you again. Stay off of there. So that stands out to me that A.J. Brown, good kid, good heart, think he means well. He needs to block out the noise to succeed here in Philadelphia. The other thing that I thought about as I listened is A.J. Brown said he felt misunderstood. And I understand he probably does. And maybe he is. And as we learn more about him and he talks more, I do think we'll understand him more. But one thing that stood out is he talked about being misunderstood. And it was almost felt like a why me? Why am I the misunderstood guy? Well, you're the one that wears your emotions on your sleeves, right? It wasn't Brandon Graham. It wasn't Fletcher Cox. It wasn't Lane Johnson screaming and yelling on the sidelines last year in a playoff game, this year against Minnesota. It wasn't those guys who didn't talk for 2 weeks to the media and then held court. Your actions will dictate how people feel about you. Devontae Smith's a wide receiver. We don't call him a diva. Maybe he is. I mean, we'll see when his contract comes up. I don't know. But he doesn't act like one. He doesn't give off those vibes. So it's almost like the boy who cried wolf thing. Well, why are you not answering my cries? Well, you've been crying for half an hour. So with A.J. Brown, if you don't want to be misunderstood, and I'm not saying he has to change who he is, but that's part of it. If you're going to be the loud guy and you're going to be emotional guy, whether or not your heart's in the right place, people are going to react to that. Like, well, he's upset, and then the team starts struggling. People are going to add 1-on-1 and get 2, whether it's fair or not. That's fanhood. That's what we watch. We see what you put on the field as a player, and certainly the numbers and stats are enormous. And as a personality, we react to all of that. Look, he's a great player. I'm happy he's an Eagle. The trade obviously has worked out. I think a lot of this could be smoothed over as time goes along if he lays low. And I don't mean he can't talk. He could talk it, but he's invited on WIP anytime he wants. And he could hold court anytime he wants in the locker room. Reporters will listen to him. He's an interesting guy, and obviously he's a star player. What I mean, this is just a piece of advice for A.J. Brown, I would just ignore noise. If you don't like hearing people talk about maybe possibly trading you, if you don't like hear people talking negatively about your emotions on the sidelines, don't listen. Don't look. He's the one that said he scrubbed his social media to just get away, and yet he's posting and pretending it's not himself. I mean, he did that, not me. He did that. So if he really needs to kind of take a break from seeing negativity, then do that. And I just will say this, and I'll get Tucker's thoughts on what happened. A part of me was very proud he hopped on, and I was like, that's really cool. He's a guy that I want to root for more now. And I do root for him, and I like him, and I think he's a tremendous football player. Also, part of me had a little bit of worry moving forward because we all know how Philadelphia is, both us at WIP and just the fan base. A.J. Brown needed a 20-minute interview on WIP to clear the air after 25 wins and a Super Bowl trip and 2 outstanding seasons statistically. So I wonder, how is he going to handle when times do get tough? Because times really haven't gotten tough yet. I mean, they did lose 6 or 7. I understand that. But the reality is they've had a really good first 2 years with him here. How is he going to handle if the team has a losing season, if he has a down year, injury? Because people will just get more frustrated. I hope he's able to handle that stuff so he can have, a great career, not just a good one, but a great one in Philadelphia. Tucker, our final reaction to A.J. Brown. What did you think of his time with Jack and Ike on Friday?
I mean, my first thought was, I can't believe this is real. I can't believe this is happening. Shout out to Dan Wilson for making A.J. Brown FaceTime with him beforehand to confirm his authenticity. But I thought that was my main takeaway was I miss athletes being authentic, being real, speaking honestly. Think back to when I was a kid, when you were a kid, like, athletes did interviews all the time like that, right? They didn't call into WIP maybe every day, but when they sat down for an interview, they spoke honestly. They weren't a PR machine. They weren't fed answers from the team or from their agent or from their manager or from their publicist. And that's all that they said. They spoke about how they felt. And listening to A.J. Brown, it reminded me of listening to how athletes spoke when I was a kid. Like, it reminded me of listening to Allen Iverson and his press conferences. And I honestly became I thought A.J. Brown was a tremendous player. I had no issues with A.J. Brown beforehand. I became a huge fan of A.J. Brown after hearing what he said and just hearing how real he was, which is something I just don't think we get a lot of. And, hearing him talk about his relationship with Jalen and how he feels misunderstood and how he feels like he's actually a leader in this team, not a diva, but he's, kind of the vocal guy on the offensive side of the ball, is maybe, some of that emotion a little misguided at times, possibly, but his heart's certainly in the right place. And I don't think he's in this for himself and not for the team. So I came away a huge fan of A.J. Brown. I don't know if it really needed to get to that point, the way everything boiled over. Maybe he does care a little bit too much to the point where being on Twitter and Instagram may not be the best in that profession. But I mean, huge shout out to the guy for just showing up and being real, which I don't think we get a lot of anymore.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, it was a good thing for him. Like, I think in the fan base, he became his Q rating went up. People like him more now, and that's great for A.J. Brown. I do hope he's able to block out noise, because noise doesn't go away. You could come on WIP for 20 minutes. That doesn't mean someone's not going to call today and say, you know what, I want to trade Brown. Or next year, if he gets off to a slow start, says, I think we should cut him after the season. These are just hypotheticals, but that's going to happen. Every player, every star player in Philadelphia goes through that. And any major city that cares, New York, Boston, any of them. So if that stuff bothers him, then he should avoid that stuff. If he can handle it, great. And if he wants to go on WIP and talk about it, I don't think Jack and Ike and Dan Wilson and Spike and whatever show he decides to call him will ever turn down his phone call. I thought it was really cool that he called in. I thought it was authentic. And I think that we all feel now, at least the majority of us feel, this guy cares. And hopefully, moving forward, the Eagles can get a lot of guys like him that care and put that all in the right direction and continue to win a lot of football games. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following WIP Daily. We'll talk soon.